Hello and welcome to the second video about my FMS Mashigan mods and upgrades. In this video I'll be replacing the stock FMS 550 35 turn brush motor and the stock FMS ESC for this Hobbywing Quick Run Fusion SE 1200 kV waterproof censored brushless motor which has a built-in 40 amp ESC. I'm also upgrading the stock 15 kg steering servo to this 40 kg Metal Gear digital servo. But the most important job in this video will be putting some grease onto the gears in the transmission, the transfer box and the diffs, because these don't come with any on from the factory. I'll start by taking the body off the chassis. To do this I'll remove these screws. Now the body's off, I can disconnect the drive shafts and remove the screws holding in the transfer box and take it out of the chassis. Then I remove these three screws to take off the cover plate to access the gears. As you can see, the gears have no grease on them at all. I use this marine grease for my RCs, which is anti-corrosive and water resistant, and I cover both gears with a healthy amount. I put the transfer box back together and fit it back into the chassis. Now I'll take out the motor and gearbox assembly. To remove it, the first step is to take out these two screws which hold it in the chassis. Then I'll take apart the gearbox to get to the screws that hold the motor in place. While I'm doing this, I can check the gears in the gearbox to see if they have any grease. Now the motor assembly is out of the chassis, I can take off the first section. I remove these four screws and take off the cover to the slipper clutch and the first set of gears. Now these are out, I can see that the slipper clutch gear does have a small amount of grease on it. I take out another four screws to remove the slipper clutch casing, and this gives me access to the two screws which hold in the motor. I note that the gear in here also doesn't have any grease. I take out the screws, remove the motor, and then I check the position of the pinion on the shaft so I know where to put it on the new motor. Now I can fit the new Hobbywing Fusion SE brushless system. First I put grease on the gear and put it back into the gearbox case. I put the new motor in and adjust the position of the pinion gear using a piece of yellow post-it note paper. I use post-it note paper because it's slightly thicker than normal paper and gives a good tolerance between a spur gear and a pinion gear. Once this is done, I tighten the screws through the case into the motor, fixing it in place. Then I put the slipper clutch case back and grease the small gear before replacing it on the shaft. I add some more grease to the slipper clutch assembly and put that back into the case. And then I fit the cover so it's ready to put back into the chassis. And it fits straight into the chassis without any problems. Then I fit the new servo. Unfortunately, I forgot to take any photos of this, but one side slips into a recess and the other side is screwed into the chassis, which you can see on this diagram in the manual. Now I check the diff gears in the axles for grease, and I would just like to point out that this can be done without removing the body if you need to. All I have to do to look at the gears is remove the diff covers from the pumpkins on the axles by taking out these four screws. I start with the rear axle and the metal diff gears are dry. I cover the large one with marine grease and then I turn it so it spreads onto the smaller gear behind it and then evenly spreads the grease between the teeth of both gears. Then I do the same for the front axle and put it all back together. So that's the chassis done, but I want to fit some LEDs to the body before I put that back on the chassis. The lights in the front of the Mashigan have light buckets, and it has factory fitted LEDs in the headlights, but it doesn't come with LEDs in the indicators. So I fit two orange LEDs in their light buckets, and these will be on permanently like running lights and not functioning indicators when turning. Now the body's back on, we can see everything in the engine bay. I decided to replace the Mashigan's radio gear with my FlySky radio gear and put the receiver in the same place. And I put the Hobbywing Fusion on-off switch where the Mashigan's ESC used to be. I reused the Mashigan's black spiral cable wrap and some cable ties to try and keep things tidy. The Hobbywing Fusion SE system is programmable, and this is done by removing a rubber bung at the end of the on-off switch and plugging a program card into it. This Fusion system didn't come with a program card, but it can be bought separately. But I used this one, which came with one of my original Hobbywing Quick Run 1080 ESCs, and I was able to make adjustments to the settings with it. The default settings are shown in the included instructions sheet, and it also comes with a sticker showing the settings. This could be stuck into the inside of the bonnet to refer to if you needed to make adjustments while you were out using the RC. Okay, that's it for part 2. In part 3 I will take the Mashigan out for a run, testing out all the changes I've made. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching.